Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Brew at Agent Moves, and welcome to our Good to Great series, where we're all about sharing amazing stories of top realtors and how they got there so we can help more realtors become great. Let's jump in with our first guest today. I'd like you to meet Heather Shaun. We try and start these with some interesting facts about our agents, not real estate related. So, interesting one on Heather, worked for Ford Motor Company for 20 years. So, dying to hear a little bit about how that was, and then transitioning over to real estate. So, welcome, Heather, and tell us about the experience.
Well, Ford was a fluke for me. Ford did not happen on purpose. I was looking for a job I was moving. I was relocating from Ann Arbor to go up towards Flint when I got married. And long story short, I walked into Kelly Services looking for some type of temporary placement. And I scored well enough that they got me into an interview with Ford. So they hired me on the spot for a temporary contract position. I was working with new model launches. At that time I was working with the Mark 8. I think this was like 1993. It might have been the last year that they actually built the old model. And so by being there for a year and a half, they apparently fell in love with me. I fell in love with them. And I had people willing to want to try to help me. And so therefore they offered me a full-time salary position. But by doing that, the full-time position that they placed me in was in transportation. So when I was 25, I became a salaried supervisor over hourly skilled trades UAW truck drivers. So I had approximately 50 men who worked for me. They were ranged from the ages of 73 to, I don't know, like mid 20s, late 20s. But skilled trades contracts are a little different than production contracts. They were a little bit diva and prima donnas. I didn't know transportation. They threw me in an office. They told me I was in charge of the maintenance on these trucks. I was in charge of their movement. I was in charge of obviously the drivers and the time that we manpower and just equipment utilization and things that I had no idea what the heck I was doing. But it was a tough job to get into because at that time I was a 25-year-old female and these guys were looking at me like they knew I had no experience and they're like, what in the world is happening? So I had to work real hard to gain their trust. I worked really hard. That job created a backbone that I didn't know I had. And for 5 years, honestly, by the end of the 5 years, I was told I was the only salaried employee with union representation because I was very fair. However, they knew don't mess with me. If you bring it, we got to deal with it. And so I think because of that, and in my that position evolved. I got into scheduling production. Then I got so tired of being there that I wanted to quit. And then plant manager learned that I was taking off. He lost his admin, and he called and said, "Hey, not him, but HR called and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity for you. Would you be interested in coming in and helping us in the plant manager's office as his executive admin?" And I'm like, "No, I have no interest in it at all." But they liked the fact that I had a great relationship with the union. I have management skills. And that I thought, let's just give it 3 months. Just find someone and I'll stick around till you find someone. And then that turned into a 12-year gig. But yeah, so and by being in that office, I had to learn how to not accept the word no. And I worked for the highest man on the totem pole. And so I just had to learn how to say no. And between what I learned out in the garage and what I learned in that office, I became a very good negotiator. I became a very good, well, like I said, my backbone. I didn't take the BS. And back in the early or mid 90s and early 2000s, I mean, that company, let's be honest, is still kind of a man's world. So I
No,
was a rug before going into Ford. I was like a rug you could wipe your feet on. And now I'm just, yeah, I mean, I grew up and realized we all put our pants on the same way and we're here to do business and we're not taking these things personal.
yep, great story. I mean, definitely, and it's the female part of in a total man's world over there in Detroit. So it's fabulous, and I can imagine how what it did for you and growing you just personally, as you talked about. So, how did real estate? Where did real estate come after 20 years in this? Business. Obviously, you had great skill, and sounds like you had passion for it. So, tell us what happened and how you got involved in real estate.
Yeah, so my parents, my dad and my stepmother were in real estate in the mid 80s, and I really didn't have a lot of exposure to that with them. I mean, I just knew that they were doing it. That was back in the days where you had to go into an office and get a key from a lockbox, and you found listings in the catalogs. And I mean, back then I didn't have interest in it, but as I got into my 20th year at Ford, let me back up. I did get stuck in what was called a salary cut. There's more to that story. Didn't end well for me. They were looking for any way to get us out instead of doing it the right way. They did it the wrong way. So therefore, I had to figure it out. So I have a friend who was in real estate, and she was actually my real estate agent, and she and I remained friends. And she said, "I'd love to hire you as my assistant. Can I get you licensed? I have a small boutique brokerage, and I want to." She wanted to practice real or not practice. She wanted to run her real estate office in Florida, and she said, "I need you to run my Michigan business so that we can be in both states." And so I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. And I'm happy to do so. But I didn't really have any real concept of like, I just thought I was going to be she was going to be mentoring me and she was going to hold my hand. And so when I got licensed, I was very excited about the opportunities, but she quickly left to go to Florida. And I was sort of sitting there trying to figure out now what. And so she was throwing clients in front of me, and I'm like, I don't know what to say to them. I feel like a door opener. I felt like a fraud. And I started working with an investor, and I had no idea how to talk to that guy. And he was counting on me to help him find these great deals. And so she recommended I start finding classes. And the board at the time, there were some classes, but not what I needed. And if I went online to go find classes, they cost me money. And at that moment, I was a single mom with two kids trying to figure this out. So I, I recognized how much I needed to know. And at that moment, I was like, do I have to go back to corporate? Do I have to figure out another way? And then at that moment, I was like, no, I want this to work for me because I'd missed out on so much of my kid's life. I wanted the flexibility. And I just made a decision that I have no choice but to make it work. So I don't know what happened. The planets all aligned. I ended up going into an open house with a client, ran into this darling, dear older gentleman. He's probably in his mid 70s, worked for Keller Williams, and we just chatted. And he heard a little of my story, and he reached out and asked if I'd be interested in having coffee. And I just wanted someone to talk to. And I'm so loyal. I'm like, I am not leaving her. I just need to know what to do. And that day I walked into an office and I saw people and I saw a classroom and I saw a training calendar and I heard it was all free. And it was a little mind blowing because I still had no concept of what I was supposed to expect or what I needed. And yeah, so that was really it. I went home that night, cried myself to sleep, told my girlfriend Caroline, I'm like, I have no choice but to leave you. I have to go. And I've been with Keller Williams for 7 years and it was the best decision. This company is very good we're known as a training company. We are very good for brand new agents, getting them on their feet as quickly as possible. And we have there's just so many resources. I guess that's all I can say. And I can tell you a little bit more about the in betweens because I know we're going to talk about it. But I mean, here I am 7 years later running a brokerage with 280 agents, helping run an office. I'm also still an agent, but it brought me into a leadership role that I never thought possible. And it really didn't happen. It didn't take very much time to get here.
Wow. Wow. Great story and great accolades for Keller Williams for sure. Yeah, I know a bit about the training programs and so forth. So, and it's the life decisions, right? That you made, how this really came about, right? So, okay, we got the story and great, the lead in on how difficult it was without training, I think is a key part here, right? And, so fortunate to meet the gentleman you met and how this, all happened. Like you said, the stars were aligned. So now as things are going, and, we know things aren't perfect, right? Like you said, 7, 8 years now with them, you were through the pandemic. Tell me some of the challenges that you faced, as you are now, you got into the training, I'm sure incredibly excited. You had all these people. It wasn't just you in an office. So tell me about how it, moved forward and then some of those challenges that you faced.
Yeah. So when I got into it, it was like 2018. I jumped into a team because at that moment I just felt very inadequate. I didn't know where to go find business. I needed some help with marketing. I needed a mentor. And I still was like so green that I didn't really understand. Like I could have done this by myself, but my lack of confidence, no matter how confident I was leaving Ford Motor Company as like this person who can do it, my lack of confidence in the actual industry, I didn't know anything. So I jumped into this team with the promises that they were going to help me. And they did in ways. I mean, I'm not going to say that they didn't do enough for me, but I felt like I needed to get more. And I was a sponge. I needed to learn. And I was picking up clients left and right. I became his top producing agent in a very short amount of time. And I was giving up 50% of my income. And as a single mom with two kids, I couldn't accept that. And in 1 year, I was already making as much money as it took me to make in 20 years at Ford. So I was just like, I got to figure this out. I got to do something different. And in that market center at that time, we had a productivity coach, but because I was on a team, I wasn't necessarily in this productivity coaching program that was offered. And that said, I think I was a little worried to walk away from that team there and not hurt this man's feelings and try to go be single agent and all these things. And anyway, um, Keller Williams offered a program called Breakthrough Coaching through MAPS, and it's a mastery level training or coaching program. And I think it was like $500 a month. And we met once a week for 30 minutes. But my biggest challenge at that time was I was broke. I mean, I was making money, but I still had to put a roof over my head. And I decided to pick up Shipped, which is a grocery delivery service. So I could work flexible hours. I could get a paycheck on Friday. I met my ends meet, I was making my ends meet so that I could just get the coaching. And I stayed with that coaching program for 2 years. And it was the best thing that had ever happened. I got paired up with a coach in Maryland, and the very first day, she asked me, like, what does your 5 year plan look like? And nobody's ever asked me anything like that before. And I mean, I was like a deer in headlights. I really don't know. I don't even know. And my kids were graduating. I had one in college and one was getting ready to graduate in like 2 years or maybe a year. Anyway, so I just said, I really, after the kids are graduated, I don't necessarily need to be here and I'm ready to make a change. I'm getting itchy. I need to get out of here. And so she's like, all right, well, what would it look like for you to start planting seeds in another community now so that when you're ready to make the move, then you can pick up and move that also. Like, don't do it all at once. So where I live in Michigan, where I was is kind of like west side. It's like over near Lansing in the middle of the state. I decided I wanted to go to the east side, more over towards Detroit in the suburbs where there was more people. And I ended up finding an office. I had no idea that the place I'd picked, and lived here my whole life, but I had no idea that the city I chose to move my license to was Birmingham. And it's the bougiest city in the state of Michigan. And it's like our little Beverly Hills, right? It's where all the money is. And I'm like, oh, like, what am I doing? But I made a decision that if I can make it here, I can do this anywhere. And so I chose to be an independent agent. I chose to build my business in that office. I did well. I got enough. I mean, I did well enough. We have $100 million pursuing agents in that office. I mean, I was just doing what I needed to do to make my life, take care of my life. But in that moment too, because I came from Ford and I'm just a natural tendency to want to be taking care of people, I found myself on what's called the Agent Leadership Council, which is our ALC. It's represented by the top 20 agents in the office. I was not a top 20 yet. So they broke the model, brought me in, and I started running what was called our culture committee. And that committee is created to help build out events that help bring in the community and for the exposure of our agency. But also, like, my idea of culture was very different than anyone else's because I came from a company where morale was so low for so long and the windsock and the times of change was constant. I really felt that we have to build the morale internally for us to be able to represent ourselves and glow externally, right? And so and it was coming out of COVID too. So a lot of people were still feeling like they were hesitant to come back in the office. They've been stuck in their homes forever. And people were now trying to migrate back into an office space. And it's just that inclusivity. I was new, I didn't know anyone. And we're bringing new agents in all the time. So it's like, and that's a very diverse office in terms of like a mixing pot of just nationalities and whatnot. And it was just so interesting to me. Like, I needed these people to feel happy where they were so we could go out and just be great. That opportunity, it was a volunteer job, and I found myself 9 to 5 just being culture, and to the detriment of my volume and my production. And one day, the owner partner, who also owns the office now I'm in now in Royal Oak, came to me and said, "We have an opportunity as an assistant team leader. You would be great for the role. Would you be interested in putting your name in the hat?" And I thought I was going to be one of 10 interviews, and just was like, sure. I mean, it's not something I've really considered, but I would be willing to hear more. And I did not realize that I was the choice. And then I was scared to death to say yes, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to come in there. There's 300 agents, and I'm now supposed to be hiring and coaching and, helping train. And I have a staff of 3, and we've got a staff of 7, but I had 3 direct I'm saying, so 3 direct employees. I can't even talk right now. And I felt like I did the first day I got into real estate. I was scared, and a deer in headlights, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm not sure if I can say that word. Sorry. And then I got in here, and I remember probably within the first 3 months, I was working under a team leader. His name's Justin Oliver, and he's a great leader. And I was really worried to, fail. I was worried to fail and make him look bad. I was afraid to fail to make the owner partner look bad, because they put me out, they kind of went out and just offered that to me. And so I remember sitting at one of our conferences, and the team leader, Justin, says to me, what's going on? He's kind of giving me this little semi performance review, and he's like, you earned the right to be here. Now go do your freaking job. And then all of a sudden, I just kind of sat back, and I'm like, okay, all right, we're going to do this. And so that's been 2 years. I've been in this role for 2 years. I love it. I'm still an agent in production. My focus has been, I do coach a lot to the dual agents, because there's a lot of people still in this trying to get into real estate and trying to like cut the ties with this other full-time job they may have. But otherwise, we've got a really great office here, and this market centers the energy. And I'm watching brand new agents getting on their feet every day. And I feel very proud knowing that I've come from a place of, scarcity and lack of confidence, and not believing that I could make this happen, to being able to show that I can make it happen and do it at the same time as leading. So it's fulfilling. And I'm very sorry about that. Very, just very proud and humbled.
Excellent, excellent. I love it. It's a great story. And you're very different than a lot of the other agents that I've been interviewing, heavily into solo or smaller teams, right? Versus how you've been able to go now and help run an office with over 200 agents. It's an amazing story. So I'm not going to ask you 5 years, but as you're looking at growth plans, right? What's the plan now for you getting to that? What's next? What's the next level for you?
So interesting you asked. We did vision boarding last night with our agents. So I hung my vision board up, and something that I really do love to do is coach. And, we can coach here, and I do a lot of one on one coaching with a lot of agents, but I would like to get certified in coaching to be able to not just coach agents, but maybe build out another income stream so I could work with other people, because it's not just about, I've transformed myself. And I will not go into the rest of my story, but in the last, since 2011, my life has started over several times. And so it's just been transformational, and having to go through these seasons. I love that I can spend time, and I notice a lot of my one-on-one coaching, treading the line of therapy is like, trying to get their head in the game, but making time for them and giving them a space where they can just be real and vulnerable and step back, because a lot of the things that go on psychologically, we get it in front of ourselves and we prevent the success stories. So I try really hard to get them to be okay with some of the things and work through some of the things that can get them to the other side. I'm very vocal, and sometimes I probably wear my thoughts and feelings on my sleeve too much, but I believe that my lessons learned and my story has been inspiring to others. So, I think, and it's helped other people feel comfortable enough to come out of their little shell like that. So I think a coaching business is something, and I still plan on staying in production, maybe building out a small team because I do feel like I'm chasing a few rabbits. But in this industry too, we all are looking for another way of having income streams. But like I know what my gifts are. And it's almost like I don't want to spread myself too thin, but I just feel like I can't just stay stuck in this one space. Like I have a lot to give and I want to share that.
Right. That's just an awesome story. I can feel it from you, right? The passion, the caring. Although there's been a lot of conversation, I can tell you're probably a great listener to be able to, help people the way that you're helping them, and to want to coach. It's a soft skill that is not easy, not easy to teach, not easy to learn. But you sound like you have it, and it just sounds like it's an amazing turn of event. Whatever's gone on in your life, hey, we all have our stuff, and you've transformed it a few times. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think the point about listening too is it just getting to the point where I had to learn how to stop people pleasing. And I think the other part of that is when you're listening, to be able to give really tough love with love, like coming from a place of love, right? And sometimes people just don't want to be that honest with others because they're so afraid of how that's going to make them feel. But, we're in this business, this is tough as it is. And if you have some things we've got to work on, then we have to start there first because the rest of this is not going to come together. If you've got all this chaos going on over here, and you've got chaos going on over here, these two are not going to align, right? So it's just, I think that's where and I won't go further into it, but it's pretty much like everything I've learned. I just want to share that with others because I know if you stay focused enough through it, you're going to get to the other side. And it's beautiful. I
I
want
was gonna, I
others to
was
have.
going to say that's beautiful. It really is. And I'm sure people appreciate it. And my wife happens to be a therapist, so I know what you're talking about and how you treat people and so forth. So I'm really great meeting you, Heather. I really appreciate the time. I think
Yeah.
agents are going to get some great value out of hearing you. And for everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode and you got some nuggets of maybe more than a few nuggets out of this from Heather. And if you have, show us some love by, liking and subscribing, the subscribe button. And we'll see you next time. And thank you again,
Thanks.
Heather.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.